Hey everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Focus Your Ads podcast. Today we're going to be talking about shopping ads, e-commerce stuff, because that is one of the sides that I work on. I do have a lot of e-commerce accounts as well as service clients and all that stuff. So we're going to go over some shopping ads because I find shopping ads don't get a whole lot of love anymore. It's because Performance Max has kind of taken over, and for a good reason. Performance Max can actually do a really great job at getting in front of the right customers and all that. But there's something to be said about, as I've mentioned, about having that extra control, about gaining that granular control over your search terms and just getting the right quality search terms coming in. Like, for example, if you sell a Canon camera, as I've mentioned before, like let's say we sell a Canon camera, you want to get in front of people searching for Canon, and let's say it's a Rebel SL2, just looking at the actual camera I have in front of me. So if you want to get in front of the people that are searching for that, then you want to show up for that term. You don't want to show up for, black camera or black camera photos or something else that could be related to the camera, but not exactly the camera itself. So this is, and you think, well, shopping, it's impossible to get that kind of control. But actually, you can get almost more control in shopping than you can in search, which is surprising maybe to some people. But there is a way to do it, and it's called, a lot of people call it like an alpha beta, or you call it keywords sculpting. There's different terms, or search term sculpting, I think it's called. So there's different ways of doing it. We're going to kind of go over some of the important steps, important parts of this. I have a kind of after I do this, I have a checklist that kind of makes me go over what I'm missing, what I could improve, or anything that I've missed, because a lot of times I go through this so quickly and then I have to come back and just double check a few things. And that's what I'm going to go through, is that kind of that double check, because that covers off some of the main points of what you need to do in a shopping campaign. So it's going to be a little more tactical. I know it's an audio podcast. YouTube is just seeing my face. We're not actually showing the checklist on YouTube, but if you guys do want the checklist, let me know in the comments on YouTube, or send me an email at support@focusyouраds.com, and I can surely send you a copy of this checklist. That way you have a copy as well. So let's start going over it here, and just kind of go over the different points and the reasons why we have this set up this way. So first off, I have a check, like an area here for campaign structure check. So one of the big things is to name them properly. So I have alpha and beta campaigns are created and named clearly. If you don't name your campaigns properly, this is going to be very hard to manage. So naming them, and a lot of times I will name them with, I'll have shopping dash, and then it might be the brand name, and then I'll have dash, and it might be alpha. So it's really important to have alpha or something that distinguishes what part of the funnel or what part of this campaign structure you're using. Because what you're doing here, just to kind of go back, I guess I should explain what happens here, is for a shopping campaign like this, you're using Google's priorities, which it's a setting, and we'll go over that setting in a second, but there's a setting in there to change the priorities. So you can have a high priority, and that high priority means that Google's going to go there first. So if I have the same product, let's say it's a Canon camera, and I want to show up for all terms, and I want to show up for Canon terms. Now I have a low priority and high priority. So if I want to show up on all the terms, that's going to be in my highest priority, because that's going to be the first thing that comes in. Google's bringing in all the keywords. There's no keyword picking in shopping, so you don't get to pick your keywords. So Google's bringing that in from your feed and from your website. They're bringing all that in, so they're picking the keywords for you, right? So we're essentially taking our scalpel and we're sculpting what we want to see go into our alpha, where we can spend more money on that. So we're going to get all those keywords into the beta, which is high priority, and then that's going to get pushed into the alpha, which is a low priority or medium priority if you have 3 different layers. But let's just keep it easy here for now and there's a high priority and a low priority. And now we can say, well, anything that says Canon in it, we want that to bounce into the low priority. So now we can, and in the low priority, we want to have, let's say, $5 bids. So we want to be really aggressive in the alpha. That's the alpha campaign, low priority. In our high priority, maybe we want 20-cent bids. We want really just kind of get some stuff in there, but not too much. And we're kind of pushing all the big stuff into the high priority, or the low priority, sorry, into the alpha campaign. So that's how it works. So naming it's super important, especially if you end up getting 3 layers like an alpha, because you can have a low, medium, and high campaign. And if you don't name them properly, or if you have multiple brands and you're trying to separate them out in different campaigns, it can be madness if you don't name them properly. So naming them is a huge thing. If you're going to name it one way, name them all the same way so you can organize it really well in your campaigns. So let's continue on. So we have, is daily budget shared with only with this brand, and is it correct? So what I mean by that is we have to set up a shared budget. If you don't set up a shared budget, you can actually run into issues where your beta runs out of budget before your alpha, or vice versa. If one of them runs out of budget, it can cause some weird issues to happen. If you have a shared budget, they both run out of budget at about the same time, and you don't necessarily have this, because it's when the beta runs out of budget, what happens is that filter is lost. You don't have that filter anymore. So Google goes now to the alpha, and it's going to say, oh, well, this one still has budget. Let's just push all these terms to the alpha, and there's no funnel anymore. So there's nothing to funnel the traffic you want into the alpha. So if they're shared budgets, then they both shut off at the same time. So that's why I find it's important to have the shared budget set up. Let's go into the next one here. So I have different campaign settings. So I have this separated out into alpha and beta, but we'll go over, it's the same settings on both of them. I just have different checklists to make sure I cover both. So with the campaign setting checks, so we want to hover over where it says campaigns. That's how we get there. And then we're going to go to campaign priorities. And we want to make sure, again, that the beta is on the high and the alpha is on the low. That's the most important part of this whole setup, or one of the most important parts. If you have that backwards, it's not going to work. The locations. So we also want to make sure that you've added and excluded the proper locations. This is always going to be important, and that they match. So everything in one campaign has to match the other campaign. If it doesn't match, then you're going to have issues and it's just not going to work. And locations is one of those things that has to match, as well as what products are showing up. Everything has to match other than the priorities and the names of the campaigns. One other thing I put in here is also to check for the presence and people in. That's a location setting that I find most people miss. But again, that has to be the same on both of the accounts. Otherwise, you're going to have stuff slipping through from the beta into the alpha that you didn't want to slip through. And then also manual bidding. This is where you'd want to be using manual bidding. I've tested with max clicks. I've tested with other bidding strategies. I always come back to manual bidding because it just creates the cleanest amount of search terms going through. If I have any other kind of bidding strategy, it seems like things just kind of slip through the cracks, and we don't get the same quality coming through into the alpha. So I always set it up as manual bidding. This always gives me the most amount of control as well. And if you do maximize clicks or some other bidding strategy, then you're going to have separate budgets, and everything just kind of breaks down a bit once you use different bidding strategies. But if you're using this setup, I use manual bidding for it. And so again, you're doing that, you're checking that on the alpha and the beta, all these things. Now, again, as I mentioned, one of the big issues that I find is people don't have the same products in both campaigns. So make sure your product groups are the same in your beta campaign as well as your alpha campaign. If they're not the same, then you're going to have things getting pushed into the alpha that don't belong. So you have to make sure you have the same products in both of them. And that allows you to prevent anything from slipping through. If you're going to have a different set of products, you can have as many products in there as you want, but they have to be the same on both of them. And then just keep in mind that whatever search negative keywords, and that's one other part to this whole process, the negative keywords on your beta campaign are what pushes everything into your alpha campaign. So you're using negatives on one campaign, and that's pushing it into the other campaign. So that's how we're controlling it. We're using negative keyword lists. That's what I use. And we're setting those on only the beta campaign. And that's going to push any of those keywords over to the alpha campaign And that's, so if you want Canon to show up, you put Canon as a broad match in the beta campaign. That's going to push that into the alpha campaign. Now you're going to show up for anything Canon in the alpha campaign. So it kind of pushes things across, and that helps. And that's what makes this whole system work. So you're pushing your negatives, and that priorities is what pushes everything over to the alpha campaign. And if it's not the same, it's going to cause lots of issues. Again, I have a note on here to make sure you set the bids at the product group level, because if you set them at the ad group level when you're creating this, it just won't work. So make sure you're setting the bids at the product group level. One other thing that I don't even have on this checklist is that you can actually use remarketing in this as well. So keep that in mind. There's a couple ways you can set up remarketing. One would be to put audiences on top of these, and you could have them as observation. So observation audiences, I know we're getting a little bit into the weeds. This is getting pretty advanced, but this is for my e-commerce people that are kind of digging into this head first. And but you can set that up so you can have different audiences for like you can set up a remarketing audience on both of them, and then you can adjust the bids. Because you're using manual bidding, you can now put a like a 12% increase or 20% increase on anyone that's returning to your store. So that's one way to do it. You can also do this by having a remarketing campaign entirely set up as a high priority again, and this one could be set as target for that audience, and that'll prevent anything from going to the alpha campaign, but you can put a really high bid on the remarketing campaign. So there's two different ways you can kind of set this up. Okay, so let's continue on here. Then we have the negative keyword lists, which we already talked about. Negative keyword lists, that's what I use to separate them out. So again, I'm just attaching it to the beta, not the alpha, and then I'll put another negative keyword list on both of them, and that's my exclude from everything list. That prevents anything from showing up on either campaigns, and that's how I ensure that the keywords that we never want to see don't show up on either campaign. But if I want them to only show up on the alpha campaign, that's where I put it on. I attach to the beta campaign. And let's see what else we have here. Our negative terms, we already went over that. That's pretty much it. So let's just go over, review the whole setup here again, just to kind of explain how it all works, just in case you're not following what I'm talking about here. So keywords and search terms are pulled in from Google in a shopping campaign. Google brings those in. They go into your beta, which is set on high priority. We have negative keywords set up only on the beta campaign that are going to now say, Google, we don't want to show up on these keywords. Those are the keywords we actually do want to show up on. That's the key. So that's a term like Canon, and we don't want to show up on that in the beta campaign, and that's what we're telling Google. So Google's going to say, okay, well, we have the keyword, the search term. Someone searched for Canon EOS. Now that matches the Canon, so that's a broad match Canon exclusion. So we're going to move that now because it doesn't work. It doesn't work in the beta. Google says we can't actually show that because you're excluding it. So now they look for the next priority down, which is the low priority, because we had a high priority. Now it's a low priority, which is your alpha campaign. And they look now in your alpha campaign and say, oh, well, there's no negative on the alpha campaign for Canon. So now we can show it there. It's perfect. Oh, they have a $5 bid on here. So now we're going to bid $5. So if it showed up on the beta, it would have been a 20-cent bid, but no, it was excluded. So it went to the alpha campaign, and that's where you have a really high bid. It doesn't have to be a $5 bid, but if you're a little more aggressive on the alpha campaign, because those are the people that are lower in the funnel. And that's what you're kind of working with here. You're kind of saying, okay, beta is the terms that are higher in the funnel. Maybe they're the searches like, I need a camera for recording myself while I'm doing a YouTube video. And then so someone says, okay, that's a good term for Canon cameras, but is it the right term? Is it going to convert right away? Probably not. It might be a good term because they could go and do some research and find Canon cameras and then do some YouTube. It could be a long line before they ever get back to where they're now typing in Canon camera, EOS, Rebel, and they have all these specs about this camera that they want. Right? So that person now with all these specs is way more likely to buy. So that's why we now push that into the alpha campaign, where we're going to spend a lot more money on that click, because we know that maybe 1 in 10 clicks actually converts and actually turns into a full out sale. So I know we've kind of dove headfirst into the whole shopping alpha beta campaigns, and there's a lot to learn here. And you can even do this with like 3 tiers. So you could have 3 different tiers, and a lot of times I'll do that. I'll have I'll either call it like low, medium, high, or I'll have beta and then 2 alphas, alpha 1 and alpha 2, and it's the same thing. You're pushing it up down the row here, and if you wanted to push it to the medium, you only exclude it on the beta. If you want to push it to the alpha 2, you'd put an exclusion on the beta and the alpha 1, and that allows you to say, if you want the Canon Rebel, let's stick with that again, and you can push it up to the alpha 2. And then let's say we had someone searching for DSLR cameras, something like that that's a little closer, like that's the type of camera that this is. So let's say that that's a little closer to what we want. So now we could put that in the medium campaign, because we know they're a little closer. Maybe they don't know the brand, they don't know the model yet, but they're a little closer to buying it. So we can push that into the medium, where maybe we have a dollar bid and we're bidding a little more aggressively. And then once they come back and search for Canon specific lens or what have you, then it goes all the way up to the alpha 2 campaign. So there's lots of ways to do it, and that's why I say you can almost have more control than with a search campaign, because an exact match in search is actually a lot looser than what I'm talking about here. Whereas we can actually pick, and when we select a negative keyword in here and say Canon, if someone types in Canons or something like that, that's not going to show up, or it has to actually match the actual writing. So if you had Canon, or they misspell it and you only have 1 N in the middle, like it's the way it's actually written, but say for example they write it with 2 N's in the middle, that's not going to show up unless you exclude that as well. So you have to be careful there. You have to make sure you're excluding like all the variations, all the different types, because it's so specific. And then what I do is a lot of times I'll look through my beta. That's why I always like to have at least some kind of bid on the beta, because you can look through there and say, oh, that's actually an alpha term, or that's an alpha 1 or an alpha 2 term. Let's move that into the alpha 1. Let's move that into alpha 2, and you get so much control. And then you pair this with something like Performance Max. Now you get a little more of that control, but you still have Performance Max doing what it does. And it's tricky because they both work off the same shopping feed. So you can either exclude it from the Performance Max and just make sure that you're only running on the alpha beta setup, or you can have them kind of competing with each other a little bit. They can work together, because Performance Max will still it'll still show up even though you're running this alpha beta setup. So this setup will still work. But if Performance Max is kind of cherry picking all the best terms, it might cause your shopping ads not to perform quite as well. But just keep that in mind, that they're kind of pulling from each other. So if you are running both of them and you see a bit of a lower ROAS on your shopping ads, just be careful to completely get rid of it and pause the shopping ads, because maybe it's actually providing a lot of value to the Performance Max, and the Performance Max is now kind of just cherry picking those remarketing terms, like where someone's come back a second time to your website. Now they're kind of cherry picking that and getting you the better of and essentially getting you better performance, but it wouldn't be better performance if it wasn't for the shopping ads. So that's a lot to kind of think about. And if you're new to Google Ads, this might not be the episode for you, but I hope you learned a little bit from it, or maybe just opened your eyes up to the possibilities of shopping ads. I do have some videos on this on my channel, so if you do want to learn this, I do have, I think, 1 or 2, actually 2 videos, I think, where I walk you through how to set up the alpha beta. One's the 3-tier setup. So if you want to learn more about how to actually do this, take a look at my channel. There on YouTube, there is some videos on there. And otherwise, if you want to work with me, feel free to send us an email, support@focusyouраds.com, or reach out to us on our website. It's focusyouраds.com. You can read about me, and you can actually send us a message right in the contact form, and we'd be happy to chat. And if we're a good fit to work with you, then we'd be happy to work with you. Okay. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next podcast. Take care. Bye.